Welcome in to another exciting episode of The Scene. On today's show, we have singer-songwriter from the great state of Wisconsin, right in between spring and fall. He's from Winter, Wisconsin. Roger Lee. Roger, how are you this morning?
Good. A little rainy up here, but staying dry and warm, so I'm good.
Well, that's what we like to hear. We had quite the day of storms here in South Dakota yesterday, too, so... How fantastic. Well, Roger, we've never met in person. You reached out to me, some posts that I've been making, inviting musicians to come and tell their stories. So that's what we're going to do. I think I'd like to start with a little bit of backstory on you, Roger. So for all of our listeners, why don't we kind of get to know Roger Lee?
Well, I'm like you said, I'm from northern Wisconsin. I've been a blue-collar worker all my life. I've been a machinist for over 30 years, and I just never really participated in music a lot other than love music, listen to music. I had a guitar. I got a guitar when I was 24, and never really made time to learn it. I would pick it up for 3 months, play it a little bit, set it down, and I'd get involved in some project. If it wasn't working overtime, it was remodeling a room or something to that nature. And that's kind of was my routine. I'd pick it up, might be a year down the road and pick it up, the guitar up another, 8 months later, and never really dedicated time to it. So other than that, I guess the reason I got a guitar was because when the family members came over, I never really, they always brought a guitar over and we'd sing at the end of the night. And I thought, well, I like to sing, but I think I better get an instrument. So my wife gave me a guitar for my Christmas gift the one year. And that's kind of how it went. The only time I really took it out much is if we had a little get together and I played the 3 songs I knew.
Wow.
And,
so it really started with the family. So music has always been a part of your guys' lives, and it sounds like live music especially. I grew up in a household very similar to that. My dad, my uncle both play guitar. I remember my grandma having sheet music for us every Christmas and singing all together as a family. She would play the accordion. So how cool to kind of know that there's a lot of families that have that tradition of music around, and that it was that foundation, and maybe that you didn't dedicate yourself to it early, but it was always around and kind of in the periphery of your life.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
So, Roger, when did you really start to take music seriously then?
Well, so when I was 47, I started a new job, and my previous job, I had injured my neck, and so I went to this new job, which is in the cities. My wife talked me into getting a second opinion on my neck, and so I went and got a second opinion. And 3 days later, I get this phone call, and it's, you got to get in the hospital right away. I'm like, well, why do I got to do that? Oh, you got a neck problem. You got to get in. You could turn your head funny and you could be paralyzed. And I'm like, well, can it wait a month? Because I didn't have any insurance or anything, and they're like, no, you got to get in right away. So I went in, and the short end of the story is I found out I had stage 4 cancer.
My goodness.
Yeah. So that kind of started the whole thing, because I had stage 4 lymphoma. I had it in my neck, my pelvis, and I had a tumor on my kidney the size of a football, they said. And so they started treatment right away. And while I was going through chemo, I didn't have energy to do anything. So other than walking the dog twice a day, I didn't do much of anything. And then I started practicing my guitar. And I started doing it religiously, and really, it was really therapeutic for me. I never really noticed it, but you don't think about anything but what you're doing. So that's where it all started, with a cancer diagnosis. And I didn't really think of it beyond that, other than I'm enjoying it, doing what I'm doing, and I didn't have any plans of where it was going to go. or anything. And here I am, it'll be 10 years in August. I'm in remission, and the now I play in public and do things I never even planned on doing.
That is amazing. First of all, I want to congratulate you on being cancer free. A disease that will touch every American's life, and it's not a matter of if anymore, it's when. Um, but how grateful are you then that music has always kind of been in the background of your life, that um, it was an easy thing to grab a hold of when everything else in your life was gone. You said you worked, and it sounds like you stayed plenty busy as a craftsman, a machinist, like you said. I'm a welder by trade.
Okay.
I know those kind of jobs. I know the kind of places that you work in those kind of jobs. It's a lot of hours. It's a lot of hard hours. There's not a lot of energy left for the pursuits that bring us joy in life. And how strange sometimes that a thing like a cancer diagnosis and all of a sudden this huge availability of your time and a needed distraction, and music just kind of rushed in to fill that space.
Definitely. It was, like you say, it's a grind doing the day in and day out thing. And you don't really feel like picking up a guitar when you get home, you know?
No, and especially learning as an adult. For me, Roger, I learned when I was in, 8th grade, 7th grade. I think I started playing drums in concert band 5th grade, right? And I'd always been surrounded by music. So I got to learn when I had that time, all through high school and having a guitar in my hand. And then, through my 20s even, and especially early on, late teens. And, I didn't go to college and jump right out into the workforce. I was a vagabond musician. I threw a guitar on my back and just went out and traveled the West Coast. And, reading Jack Kerouac at 18 will have that effect on you, I suppose, and kind of growing up with hippie parents. But so, yeah, I have a lot of respect for people that learn an instrument and pursue that later in life, because it's not as easy. It's not as easy to find the time to learn. That's really what it is. I think we're perfectly capable mentally of learning new things. The old adage, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, I think is gone by the wayside. We've all learned how to use the internet, right? So that's
Still,
not
though,
true.
when you are learning, though, when you're 8 or 15 years old, you can pick something up so much quicker than when you're 50.
Yeah. Well, you
Because
don't have to
your hands
unlearn.
don't,
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
hands move better.
Yeah, well, and yeah, there's not the arthritis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those things, and that's when young guitarists. I always say that it's the finger dexterity early on. You don't need to be learning songs or learning any of this stuff. You need to get your hand to be able to move into all these strange positions that it's going to have to move into. And it's going to have to be able to do that really fast. And then it's going to have to be able to do it where you're not even thinking about it. And it takes a long time just to build all the muscle memory. And it's exactly that. It's time. And for people who are in their careers and in those, stages of our lives where you have kids running around and you don't have any time to be sitting and playing, 3, 4, 5 hours a day. I mean, up into the double digits. Some of these kids, lock themselves in a room and play, till the fingers are bleeding.
Right.
Right.
Definitely.
And so it sounds like, you got to kind of have that time of your life because of the cancer diagnosis and because of treatment and not being able to do anything else, that you had that time of your life much later. So did you kind of start from the ground up when you had the time again? Or, did you have a little bit of a base from all those years of kind of picking it up, putting it down, picking it up, putting it down?
Yeah, I had a bunch of songs that I could do good enough around the campfire. That's about it. But it definitely gave me a foundation. I'm no guitar virtuoso, but I'm a good rhythm guitar player now. And it was just building off of what I knew, and just being consistent. Where I heard years ago when I started, oh, just pick up your guitar 15 minutes a day. And well, I didn't realize that 15 minutes a day means a lot of times you're playing it for half an hour. So that really, them things kind of came together that I was told or learned through the years. And
they can just stop it, pick it up. Just pick it up every day.
Right.
Because you're going to end up into it for a little bit.
Right. And then when you get something that you're into it even more, because it's like, oh, this makes sense now. My head and my hands are finally working together. And then I didn't start writing music till probably, I suppose, 5 years ago. I had a close friend of mine had passed away, and as my godfather. And at the time, we weren't living in northern Wisconsin. I was still living in the Twin Cities, and I guess it would have been more like 8 years ago. It was quite a while ago. Anyway, and I was just fiddling with my guitar and went up to the lake to get away and went by myself. And in about an hour, I wrote this song, and it was more of a spiritual song. It was kind of about his relationship with the woods and the water and whatnot. And that's kind of how my songwriting started. So now I probably got, I think I got maybe half a dozen really solid songs, and then a whole bunch of mediocre ones. But even that's really interesting, because I don't think to myself, hey, I'm gonna write a song about a tree. It just kind of comes to me, maybe the idea for a song, and then a little while later, the lyrics will come. And then sometimes I wake up and I hear a melody, and I'm not educated in this, so it just kind of comes out of nowhere. Steve Cropper is, right?
I'm not familiar, no.
He's the guitar player on the Blues Brothers.
Okay.
And he's wrote tons of music. And his saying was, I'm not a songwriter, it just kind of falls out of the sky. And I can really relate to that, because it just happens. I wrote songs that I didn't even know who they were for. Usually you know who it's for or what it's about. And one time I said to a coworker of mine, before I went to bed last night, I had an idea for a song called The Widowmaker. So, that's interesting. That was it. And then I thought, well, I better write this down. And in 10 minutes, I wrote it down, and I brought it back to him. I said, look at this. And he goes, what's that, a Will and Jenny song? I go, no, I just wrote it. And on the way back from work, it dawned on me who it was for. It was some guy I had met like 2 weeks before. And nice guy. He was a friend of a friend. And that was it. I just knew his first name was Kevin. And a couple weeks later, a tree fell on him and killed him. He was a logger. And the whole song was about the Widowmaker. It was about a tree falling. And, so when something like that happens, it's just really interesting to be part of it. I mean, I don't like to write sad songs like that, but it's actually a pretty decent song. And when I play around town here, sometimes people ask me to play it now. So
that's amazing. That's what I say about my songs. I am a conduit. These songs are coming from somewhere else. I call myself a songwriter, but really what I am is just an antenna for the song to get out there. And maybe I've had some experiences in my life that have kind of rung that bell, if you will, right? And then it's capturing that resonance is our job as the songwriter, the storyteller. And it sounds like somehow you stumbled into that, Roger, as I have as well. I've kind of had it from an early age. As I say, I'm not someone who kind of has that Nashville approach to music where it's like you got to write a song every day and you got to be in the writers' rooms and you got to be doing all of that. And I find the merits of that. I'm not here to dog on that at all. That's just not who I am. My songs,
it's not the right environment.
And my songs just don't come from there. And I'm not necessarily trying to write songs that appeal to everyone. I mean, I'm trying to tell my story. If you go through my list of songs, it kind of plays like an autobiography at the end of the day.
Mhm.
And not that I don't have some others that go outside of that. That's kind of where I am as a writer. And I think starting to understand that now a little bit about myself, um, is nice too. But yeah, everything you said about the songwriting process is the same way that I do it. I don't know where they come from, but I could
Mhm.
write 4 songs in one day, and then not write a song for 4 years, right?
Right.
Uh,
Exactly. Yeah.
so I just I kind of where I've found myself now is trying to, because I'm so busy. Beyond just doing the podcast, Roger, I'm a concert promoter. I am a musician and gigging musician, as well on top of that. So I don't have a ton of time to just sit and write songs anymore. I do have, a good backlog of songs, and we play quite a few, out live, and are beginning to release onto Spotify and to do this whole thing too. But um, yeah, it's taken me away from the songwriting aspect of it a little bit more. Now, I imagine a guy that lives up in the North Woods of Wisconsin, you got some space. You're obviously surrounded by beautiful scenery there. Um, where do you where do you find the inspiration for these songs? Is it just around you? Is it stories that are floating around in town that maybe you're only kind of subconsciously aware of until after the fact? Where are they coming from, Roger? You got any thoughts on that?
Well, so where I practice is we have a house on the lake and have a picture window that looks out that way down in the basement, and that's where I practice and whatnot. And so a lot of songs are related to nature in one sense or another. But I also am still a machinist. So some are a little bit rebellious, kind of the working man class songs of, being pinned down under the thumb. And so it's a kind of a contrast, my worlds are contrasts, kind of like George Costanza says, my two different worlds. Well, I have my full-time job down in the Twin Cities where I go on the weekends, and then because I work the weekend shift, and then I live in best
God's
place
country.
I could.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just wonderful,
Yep.
So, but so that's kind of where it comes from, and sometimes I'll just get an idea in my head and I'll jot it down. I jot a lot of things down, so I got probably 20 half-written songs that if I put some of the like-minded songs together, I could probably finish them, but I got to make time for it. And lately I've spent a lot of time marketing myself, and I'm going to get a leave of absence from work for 5 months, starting in end of May, and I'm just going to do music full-time.
Oh,
So
that's great.
so I've been spending a lot of time marketing and whatnot lately, so I haven't been doing a whole lot of new music. Plus, I want to get my set lists down, right? You want to get them down so when you're playing, you're a little more refined.
Indeed. Indeed. So it sounds like you're going to have a busy summer. You got plans on touring, and are you currently booking for shows now?
Yes, yeah. As far as touring, I don't know. I guess you could say everything up here is a tour because you're driving minimum of 45 minutes to up to 3 hours. I'm the closest town. The town I'm in is 324 people, and
You make my town of 1,000 sound huge, Roger.
yes, yeah. So
We deal with a
everything
lot of the
else,
same things here in South Dakota as well. So
sure,
where
yeah,
I
you
would
would
work.
understand.
Yep. Yeah. So I live in a small farm town, Tyndall, South Dakota. And our closest town then would be Yankton, is 30 minutes away. It's, where the Walmart is.
Right, yeah.
And then the other Walmart is, maybe an hour to the north of us in Mitchell, South Dakota, which is 2 towns that we do quite a bit of work in. We're building quite a scene in Mitchell, home of the Corn Palace, the world's only.
Been there twice.
Awesome. Well, I hope you come back through. I know you mentioned off the air that you have some friends in South Dakota, not too far away from us too. So hopefully we can get you down here for some shows. And what we're trying to build is a network that stretches across the whole upper Midwest. And you would be the farthest point north, I think, by quite a bit. Um, but, reaching out and, gig trades and all kinds of these things, the scene is not just about me and not just about you or the conversations that we have on the microphone or on camera. It's about connecting everyone and having one place where everyone can go and to just throw it out there. Hey, this is what I'm thinking. This is where I'm at and going to be. And then linking with other organizations that are doing the same. I'm a member and hoping to be a lot more integral part of the organization called the Midwest Country Music Organization. They're kind of based in the Twin Cities area. If you're not a member already, Roger, I highly recommend you go get on there. And for all of our musicians that are listening in the Midwest area, I recommend the same thing to you. Even if you aren't a country musician, these organizations, these groups of people, they're member organizations, right? You get it because not the organization, what it's going to do for you, but the connection that it gives you to other people that love music and are working in music and doing all of these things, right? And their mission is kind of the same as ours, is to build a Midwest scene. And guys like you are an integral part of that, getting out and being gigging musicians and really taking a risk, telling the job and that guaranteed income, I'm sure as a, 20, 30 year vet of machining, you're leaving quite a bit of money on the table, to not work for 5 months.
I'm kind of doing this backwards. Most people do this in their 20s I'm just doing it a little backwards. So
yeah, well, Roger, I just quit my welding job and I left the easy $50K a year to pursue this, and not because I think there's a big pot of gold at the end of this. It's because I'm being called to do it. No different than your
you have
songs.
a passion for it.
Well, and no different than your songs are doing it. I couldn't see myself continuing to go to work every day at a place that didn't appreciate me, where I was not using my talents at all. And I mean, to the point where I wasn't even welding at the job I was at, right? Where it's like, okay, well, not only are you not using all of these awesome people skills and the musician, you're not using any of those talents, but now you're also not even using the trade that I learned. It's hard for me to wake up every day and just go stand somewhere for 40 hours a week when I could be doing this. I could be having these great conversations with people like you, learning your story and then sharing that with the world and seeing what effect that has on someone else, another man, woman who are in their 40s or 50s and have the same story as you, and somehow that this story is going to help them. That's why we're doing it, Roger. That song, the Widowmaker, and exactly me knowing where you live, the first thing I thought of was obviously a snagged tree. I grew up in the Black Hills of South Dakota.
Well, that's the beauty of it, is I had somebody else tell me before I told them what it was. They said a heart attack.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, I never even thought of that.
Right. And I went there too. Yeah. And only because I grew up somewhere where logging was an industry, and we've lost friends to fallen trees. It's just the risk of the job in the logging industry. And you're telling that story. I know that once we get that song out there and spreading that around, that people are going to gravitate to that, and blue collar people like you and I are going to gravitate to that. That's a reality to them. People living in suburban, but that's why the double entendre of the Widowmaker makes it nice too, right? Because who isn't affected by heart disease and heart attacks these days either?
Oh, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So while it is about one thing, it can totally be about two things at the same time. And I just love it, Roger. I love where your heart is in the music. You obviously have a passion for it. It was really cool to get a kind of just the quick version of your story out there. I hope to see you in person and get to talk a lot more. I know you mentioned you have a Facebook profile, website at all, any of that stuff that we can share?
Yeah, just the Facebook, Roger Lee, musician on the artist page, and Facebook, put in Roger Lee. If you put in Roger Lee, it's somebody else.
Yeah,
but Roger Lee, you'll get me. And if you put in the song called "The Big C," you'll definitely find me.
Okay, so that's it. Yeah, I think I know where that one's going.
Yeah, right.
Well, Roger,
I just want, one reason I contacted you. I had 3 reasons for contacting you. One is obviously to get my name out there. 2 is, if you're older it doesn't mean you can't, like you said earlier, you can't learn something new. And go ahead and pick up an instrument, and you'll, if you dedicate yourself to it for a couple weeks, you'll realize the mental benefit from it, of just
the gratification.
Yeah, just your mind goes someplace else, and it's really therapeutic. And then the third thing is, if you ever hear somebody's got cancer, you got a reference to somebody that you can say, hey, this guy had stage 4 cancer. They gave him 50% chance of living 2.5 years, and he's in remission and living a good life.
Right. And we didn't even really get to touch on that, Roger. And I feel bad.
Which is fine. Oh, yeah. No, that's fine, but. Yeah.
No, and that's, your story is just so amazing. Like I said, as the podcast continues to evolve, it's hard to sit on a phone for, 20, 30 minutes, much less, 2 or 3 hours. But I would love to, as our studio situation evolves here, to have more of the long form conversations, but they're just so much better in person at that length of time, right? Where we can just sit and relax and kind of hang out and really get to know you. So I hope that we get to do that later this summer. We'll definitely be in touch and try to make some plans to get you out here. We have tons of songwriter nights and all kinds of things to help build our scene out here in the Sioux Falls and greater Sioux Falls area in South Dakota. And yeah, connecting with musicians like you is how we continue to grow not only the podcast, but the community that is the scene. So, Roger, thank you so much for being on with us today.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
It was just a joy. And for all of our listeners, thank you as well. And we'll see you next time on The Scene. Thank you so much for listening and sharing the show. For everything The Scene, go to patreon.com/thescenesd. Follow us on all your social media channels and make sure to make yourself part of The Scene.